December 17, 1944. Just before dawn. St. Vith, Belgium. The temperature is well below freezing. The kind of cold that turns breath into fog and metal into an enemy. Snow crunches under boots in the dark. Too loud, too sharp. Somewhere to the east, engines growl. Not the friendly kind. You can almost feel it before you hear it. The ground vibrating. The low, steady thunder of German armor rolling through the Ardennes, exactly where it was never supposed to be. Inside the shattered rail town of St. Vith, American soldiers huddle in foxholes and half-collapsed buildings, hands numb, eyes burning from sleepless nights. The sky is still black. No air cover. No comforting roar of Allied fighters. Just clouds, snow, and the sudden realization that the front line no longer exists. This wasn't supposed to happen here. Less than 48 hours earlier, St. Vith was a name on a map, a road junction, a rail hub, a dot in the Ardennes forest. Now it is the hinge of Hitler's last gamble in the West. 6 roads converge here. Whoever controls this town controls the timetable of the German offensive. And time is everything. German Fifth Panzer Army is already behind schedule. Columns are jammed on icy roads. Fuel is scarce. Orders are ruthless. Bypass resistance, drive west, reach the Meuse. St. Vith is supposed to fall quickly, crushed, ignored, left burning behind the advance. But it doesn't. Instead, American units, scraped together, exhausted, some barely knowing where they are, dig in. Elements of the 7th Armored Division. Combat commands rerouted mid-march. Engineers, tankers, infantry, artillery, all thrown into the town like sandbags against a flood. Somewhere among them is an American officer few outside the division will ever remember by name. He isn't famous. He isn't flashy. No speeches. No grand gestures. Just a man staring at a map under a flickering lantern, listening to reports that get worse by the minute. German armor has broken through to the north. Volksgrenadiers are probing the southern roads. Radio traffic is chaotic. Orders contradict each other. Pull back or hold. Outside, the first shells begin to fall. Buildings shudder. Snow leaps from rooftops. A church bell tower collapses in a roar of stone and smoke. The town is being tested by fire, by steel, by the clock itself. And as German commanders push their forces forward, confident the Americans will crumble by morning, something unexpected happens. The advance slows. Not stops. Slows. Minutes turn into hours. Hours into a full day. And somewhere deep in the German command chain, irritation becomes concern. Because St. Vith is still there. And the men holding it are not retreating. Not yet. The decision to stay. The lantern light flickers again. Inside a commandeered cellar beneath a bombed-out house, the map is spread across a wooden table stained with oil and soot. Roads marked in grease pencil. Unit symbols crossed out, redrawn, shifted again and again as reports come in. Brigadier General Bruce C. Clarke, commander of Combat Command B, 7th Armored Division, listens in silence. The messages are grim. German armor is massing east of town. Infantry attacks are probing from 3 directions. The roads north toward Withdrawal are under threat. Higher headquarters is already talking about withdrawal, about pulling back to form a new line before the division is cut off entirely. Clarke doesn't answer right away. You can almost hear the clock ticking in his head. Not just the one on the wall, but the one the Germans are racing against. Every mile they gain now brings them closer to the Meuse. Every hour delayed here ripples across the entire front. Outside, another shell hits. The ceiling dusts down into the lantern flame. Clarke finally speaks. We hold. It isn't bravado. It isn't defiance. It's calculation. St. Vith is not just a town. It's a valve. Close it. even briefly, and the German timetable bleeds out precious hours. Open it too soon, and the flood pours west unchecked. Orders go out. Tanks are positioned hull down along the approaches. Engineers rig demolitions on bridges, but don't blow them yet. Artillery is registered on the roads leading in. Infantry companies are told to dig in, deeper this time, and prepare for close fighting. No one is told how long they're supposed to hold, because no one knows. At first light, the Germans come on in earnest. Panzer IVs and Panthers nose forward through the trees, their exhaust plumes ghostly in the cold air. Infantry follows, white camouflage blending into the snow. Mortars thump. Machine guns rake the tree lines. American tank destroyers open fire at point-blank range. The first German tank burns in the road, black smoke clawing at the gray sky. Another slews sideways, track shattered. The narrow approaches into St. Vith turn into kill zones, choked with wreckage and wounded men. Radio traffic crackles on both sides. German commanders demand progress. Why is this minor road junction still holding? Why are American tanks fighting like they intend to stay? By midday, the weather closes in again. Snow. Fog. Visibility collapses. German air support is grounded. So is American. The battle becomes intimate, brutal, short range. In ruined houses, American infantry fires from stairwells and cellars. Tank crews fight blind, guided by shouted directions and instinct. Artillery shells burst so close they lift men off their feet. Still, St. Vith holds. And somewhere behind the German lines, staff officers begin to redraw their own maps, arrows bending, routes shifting, schedules slipping. They don't know it yet, but the delay is no longer measured in hours. It's becoming days. The fracture in the German clock. December 18, 1944. Morning breaks without sunlight. Fog lies thick over the Ardennes, swallowing sound, swallowing distance. German units move forward cautiously now, no longer confident, no longer sure what waits beyond the next bend in the road. Inside German Fifth Panzer Army headquarters, tempers are starting to fray. Field Marshal Otto von Manchefeld studies his situation map with growing irritation. According to the plan, his armor should already be west of St. Vith, pushing hard toward the Meuse. Instead, arrows stall. Units pile up behind one another. Fuel trucks sit idle, engines off, waiting for roads that are still blocked by American resistance. Reports come in, confused, contradictory. Enemy armor stronger than expected. Roads under artillery fire. St. Vith not yet secured. Not yet? It was never meant to be a fight. St. Vith was supposed to be brushed aside. A speed bump, not a barrier. Manchefeld snaps orders down the chain. Increase pressure. Commit more infantry. Flank the town from the north and south. Bypass if necessary, but secure the road network. On the ground, German regimental commanders try to make sense of it. Every approach into St. Vith is a funnel. Narrow forest roads. Icy curves. Destroyed bridges. American guns seem to know every bend, every clearing. When German columns push forward, artillery brackets them with uncanny precision. You could almost feel the frustration building. Men halted not by some massive fortress, but by a handful of stubborn defenders who refused to vanish. Meanwhile, inside St. Vith, the situation is deteriorating fast. American ammunition is running low. Tank crews sleep in shifts, if at all. Medics work in basements slick with blood, operating by candlelight. Communications are barely holding together. Lines are cut. Radios fail in the cold. Still, General Clarke does not pull out. Instead, he reshapes the defense again. When pressure mounts on the eastern approaches, he reinforces the west. When German units probe the north, American tanks quietly reposition to meet them. The defense flexes, bends, absorbs, never static, never predictable. German officers begin to sense it. This isn't accidental resistance. This is controlled delay. Every attack costs time. Every regrouping costs fuel. Every rerouted column tangles another unit behind it. By the afternoon of the 18th, the truth becomes unavoidable. The German schedule is breaking. Some units are now more than 30 hours behind plan. Others are lost in the forest, rerouted onto roads never meant to carry armor. Fuel consumption is climbing. Supply columns stretch thin. And still, St. Vith remains in American hands. German commanders begin using a word they had hoped to avoid so early in the offensive: problem. But the problem has a face now. Not a city, not a division, but an American commander who refuses to retreat when logic says he should. The question hanging over the German command is no longer if St. Vith will fall. It's how much time it will steal before it does. Encirclement. By the night of December 18th, the map finally tells the truth. St. Vith is no longer a bulge in the German advance. It is a pocket. German units have pushed past the town to the north and south, their columns clawing westward through the forest, leaving St. Vith behind like a splinter lodged deep under the skin. Roads that once led out are now under enemy fire. Patrols report German armor cutting across supply routes. The ring is tightening. Inside the town, American officers don't need a map to feel it. You can hear it in the sound of the guns. Fire now coming from directions that were friendly yesterday. You can feel it in the pauses between artillery rounds, the moments when everyone waits to see if the next shell is for them. General Clarke receives the message he has been expecting. Higher headquarters authorizes withdrawal. Not immediately, not in daylight, but soon. The order is cautious, careful, and deliberately vague. Delay as long as possible, then pull back to the west before encirclement becomes annihilation. Clarke reads it, folds it, and does not move yet. Because something else has changed. German attacks are losing their coordination. Infantry assaults come in piecemeal. Armor appears without proper support. Units are committing themselves to St. Vith out of frustration rather than plan. The trap is closing, but so is the German timetable. Throughout the night, American engineers quietly prepare demolitions. Bridges are wired. Roads are cratered just enough to slow pursuit, not block escape. Artillery units calculate final fire missions. Registered on crossroads, defile, and forest lanes the Germans will be forced to use once the town is abandoned. It's a withdrawal planned like an ambush. December 19th, early morning. German pressure spikes. Heavy shelling rocks the town. Panthers edge closer, firing point blank into ruins. Infantry floods through alleys and gardens, fighting house to house. American resistance begins to thin, not collapse, but peel back. And then, almost imperceptibly, the defenders start to vanish. Tank units slip west under cover of darkness and fog. Infantry withdraws by platoons, leaving behind mines, booby traps, and empty buildings that still echo with gunfire. Artillery fires one last devastating barrage, then limbers up and rolls out. When German troops finally push fully into St. Vith, they expect a last stand. Instead, they find silence. Burnout tanks. Abandoned foxholes. Maps still pinned to walls. Coffee frozen solid in cups. The Americans are gone. But the damage is already done. Behind the German front, roads are wrecked. Units are displaced. Timetables are meaningless now. Entire formations are hours, sometimes days, out of position. St. Vith falls. Yet somehow, the offensive feels weaker. German generals study the situation and realize, with growing unease, that this small town has forced them into a decision they never planned to make. They've spent their momentum, and the man responsible never even tried to win the town forever. He only needed to hold it long enough. The realization. December 20th, 1944. German headquarters, somewhere west of the Ardennes. Maps are being replaced now, not because they're worn, but because they're wrong. The neat arrows drawn days earlier have dissolved into jagged lines and question marks. Units are no longer where they're supposed to be. Some haven't reported in at all. Field Marshal von Manschufel stands over the table, silent longer than usual. The truth has finally surfaced, and it is deeply uncomfortable. The delay at St. Vith wasn't an inconvenience. It was a rupture. By holding the road hub for nearly 3 full days, the Americans forced German armor into narrow, fuel-draining detours. Supply columns stacked up behind frontline units. Traffic jams, literal ones, clogged forest roads, making them perfect targets for Allied artillery once the weather cleared. Most damaging of all, the delay bought the Allies something priceless. Time. Time for the 101st Airborne to dig in at Bastogne. Time for Patton's Third Army to pivot north. Time for Allied commanders to understand the shape of the German thrust and respond. German generals began to speak openly now, not in anger, but in analysis. St. Vith should have been bypassed, they admit, but it couldn't be ignored. The road network was too vital. Every attempt to go around it created new problems. Every hour spent fighting for it was an hour the offensive could not afford. And at the center of it all was an American commander who understood something the Germans did not expect. He didn't try to defeat them. He tried to waste them. Waste their fuel. Waste their daylight. Waste their momentum. Later, in post-war interviews and memoirs, German officers would return to St. Vith again and again, not as a heroic defense, not as a dramatic last stand, but as a professional, infuriatingly effective piece of command judgment. One German staff officer would describe it as a small action with large consequences. Another would be more blunt. The stand at St. Vith, unhinged, the timetable of the 5th Panzer Army. And behind those assessments is an unspoken acknowledgement. If the Americans had broken sooner, if that commander had followed the instinct to retreat early, the German advance might have reached the Meuse before Allied reserves could respond. Instead, the offensive began to bleed out in the snow. General Bruce Clarke never made headlines for St. Vith. He didn't give a defiant radio message. He didn't promise to hold at all costs. He simply chose the most dangerous option, to stay. And by staying just long enough, he helped ensure the German offensive would never recover its rhythm. But St. Vith was only one piece of the story. Because as the Germans struggled to regain momentum, the Allies were already moving fast, and from the south, steel was coming. The Counterweight, December 22nd, 1944. Lorraine. Before sunrise. The engines are already running. Columns of Shermans, half-tracks, and artillery pieces sit nose to tail on frozen roads, exhaust hanging in the air like smoke signals. Men stamp their feet for warmth, gripping rifles and coffee cups, waiting for the order they already know is coming. General George S. Patton has turned his army. Not in weeks. Not in days. In hours. The reason this is possible, why roads are open, why German spearheads aren't already across the Meuse, can be traced back to a small Belgian town most of these soldiers have never heard of. St. Vith. While German commanders argue over lost time, Allied planners exploit it. Patton's Third Army pivots north. British and American units rush to plug gaps. The weather begins to shift. The clouds thin. And when they do, the sky turns hostile again, this time for the Germans. Allied fighter bombers descend on the congested roads the delay created. Fuel trucks burn. Panzers are knocked out not in glorious battles, but while idling in traffic jams. The German advance, already exhausted, begins to choke. At German headquarters, the tone changes. No more talk of bold thrusts. No more confidence in sweeping breakthroughs. Now it's damage control. Salvaging what can be saved. Holding what ground has been taken. And St. Vith keeps coming up. German generals compare notes. They replay the decision points. Why did the Americans hold so stubbornly there? Why didn't they withdraw earlier, as doctrine might suggest? The answer is uncomfortable because it's simple. They understood the clock better. General Clarke and his staff didn't see St. Vith as terrain to be defended at all costs. They saw it as leverage, a way to apply pressure not on German units, but on German time. By the end of December, the German offensive has lost its edge. Bastogne holds. Allied lines stiffen. Counterattacks begin pushing the Bulge back inward. The gamble has failed. And in the post-war years, when German officers are asked where it began to unravel, some point to Bastogne. Others, more candid, point elsewhere, to a freezing rail town, to a commander who didn't seek glory, to a decision made under a flickering lantern while shells fell outside. An unknown American, they would say, ruined the plan. Not by winning a great battle, but by refusing to lose a small one too quickly.